icon. It has everything from surveys to mapping tools to chat forums and questions. You can also watch videos of different engagement sessions. And so I see we are recording here, so that's good. Thanks for starting that recording, John. Just for everyone's awareness, we're recording this evening's session just to document that. So in case any of your neighbors weren't able to attend this evening, they can actually go on and watch the video later. We do have a survey that's going to be online on the Participate Wood Buffalo page, and that's actually going to be open until January 9th. This is the holiday season, so we certainly recognize that some folks might not be able to attend this evening or maybe even respond right away because they have other priorities going on with the holiday season. So we wanted to just make sure you have plenty of time to share your feedback and learn about this project. So this will be open until January 9th. Okay, so it's 6:31. I'll get things rolling here because you've all taken time out of your day to be here. So thank you. First, I just want to acknowledge that we are meeting tonight on Treaty 8 territory, which is the traditional lands of the Cree and the Dene people. And this is where we work, play, learn, and create, I guess. We do a lot of things. This is also the territory of the unceded territory of the Métis people. And we also have some people joining us from other areas around Alberta, and we also welcome you from other treaty areas around Alberta. Thank you all for coming out tonight. My name is Will Collins, and I am an engagement strategist from the municipality. I've met some of you previously at a Prairie Creek engagement session we had a couple of weeks ago. It's nice to see you back again. Thank you for coming. And we've also got a few other of my colleagues here tonight. We've got Pankaj Harsora, who is a landscape architect from the Parks Department, and he's overseeing and project managing this particular project for the Prairie Creek Trail. And we also have John Buchko from EDS Group, and he is a consultant that has been hired to oversee the design of this project. John's going to be leading tonight's session, but we're here on hand if you have any questions, and I'm going to be in the background here sharing some information as we go through this project. And afterwards, like after this evening, if you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to me. You can send me an email. I'm going to just share that in the chat with you. And I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as I'm able and answer questions as best as I'm able. I'm certainly not a professional here, but we do have some professionals here tonight who do know a lot of information about this project and can hopefully answer most of your questions. Okay, so I guess I'll just hand it over to John now, and John, you can get started, and I'll stop rambling. So thank you very much.
Well, thanks a lot, Will. And throughout the meeting, I'm on a single screen, so Will's going to keep an eye out for any hands that are up if somebody has a question. So we'd really appreciate some dialogue from people where possible, and we will be stopping at a few points to ask some questions related to or specific to the project. So as Will had mentioned, I'm John Buchko. I'm with EDS Group. We're a team of environmental planners. We've been working in Wood Buffalo for a number of years on a variety of initiatives. So excited and happy to be involved again with the Prairie Creek community and with the broader regional municipality. Tonight we're talking about a trail within the Prairie Creek community. So reaching out to the general public and to stakeholders. We have a few engagement sessions. So this is the first of 2 public sessions that we're going to be doing. So there will be follow-up afterward. So we certainly appreciate the input we get now. That's going to help really drive the plan, the direction that we move forward. And there will be an opportunity for us to re-engage with the community again. So again, this session is being recorded and will be posted on Participate Wood Buffalo. So all of your comments, questions will be recorded for everyone to hear. We really like to include everybody and to include as much information as possible. There will also be a report that's posted called a What We Heard report, and that's going to be a summation of what's said here, what comes up in the surveys and in the various different means that we're engaging with the community. So tonight we're going to go and we're going to give people the opportunity to introduce themselves. And if you don't want to, we'll call out name by name. If you don't want to describe your, much about you, just say good evening, just to acknowledge that you're there. And really what we want to know is if you're a resident, if you're a stakeholder, if you represent a group, and if there's anything that we can do to ease participation. So if you find that you're struggling with the chat room, and maybe we can facilitate something at the end. If you want me to speak louder, certainly let us know that maybe you have speaker problems or concerns like that. And for some of you that may not have the capability of speaking, when we do call on for questions, or if we call your name, if you can just wave or use one of those functions, it'd be great to know, just to know that you acknowledge us, but you don't have the capability. I'm going to talk about the project to describe what it is. We're going to talk about the study process, what the steps are that we're taking to conduct this trail plan, some of the goals of the project, and certainly the constraints of the site. And this is based on our evaluation of the site and being out there on a number of occasions. We're going to talk about some trail alignment options. So we are putting trails, but we do have some options of where those trails go and certainly which route that they take. And there are pros and cons of those. For those of you who have had a chance to go to participate already, there is some survey questions driven toward that. And in there, we describe what some of those pros and cons are. We'll then talk about next steps of the project and how it is that we're going to proceed to detailed design and potentially to development, and then some open discussion if there is anything. So if anybody has, when you do introduce yourself, if you're not seeing something here that you would like us to address, certainly let us know and we'll try to find time at the end to do that. We do have 2 hours scheduled here. We're not going to use it. It's great if we use it. I like in vigorous dialogue, but at the end of the day, I see us finishing a bit early. That's I think a good thing on an evening where people are giving their time. So we certainly do appreciate your time here tonight. So as an introduction, again, we'll call names out just to go around or just if you want to volunteer to identify who you are, talk about if you're representing a group or if you're a resident of the community or both. Again, what would make it easier for you to participate? And then if there's anything listed here that I just showed in the outline that you would like us to address.
Thanks, John. I think it's we can start with our team. So I gave myself a little bit of an introduction earlier. So I'm going to allow or ask Pankaj if he wouldn't mind just introducing himself really quickly here and letting us know what your role is in this project.
Hi, I'm Pankaj Harsora. I've been in the municipality since 2013. I live and work in Fort McMurray. I own a home here. I'm a very proud resident of Fort Mac, and it's wonderful to be. I left for a little while and I've come back. I'm a landscape architect with the Parks Department, and I think it's great to have an opportunity to develop Prairie Creek, the neighborhood. I have worked a little bit with the Clearwater Horse Club on developing some details for fence alignment along the south edge and the east side of our associated edges. And I look forward to having this go successfully. I think it's a good project. If there's any interest in asking me questions, please reach out to me through Will or even the Pulse line. Thank you.
Thanks, Pankaj. And John has told us a little bit about himself, and actually his company has worked on a number of projects across the region. Maybe he can share a little bit about that later on this evening, but I am going to call out a few people here. This is a strictly voluntary basis. You don't necessarily need to introduce yourself or say anything, but it'd be nice to know if you're representing an organization or if you're here on your own behalf. I'm just going to go through the list that I see displayed here on my screen in no particular order. So first I see Ella Rankin, sorry, and I believe you're from the Clearwater Horse Club. Excellent, thanks for joining us. You're on mute right now, but let's see how I can unmute you. Oh, I can't do that. There we go.
Hi, thanks for inviting me tonight. I am from the Horse Club, and we're very excited about the trail system for our neighbors.
Great, thanks for joining us. Next, I see Janine.
Good evening. I'm a resident of Prairie Creek, so I just kind of back onto the green space, and then the horse stables are right behind me as well. So
Awesome.
I'm looking forward to it as well because I love just walking back there in general. So I'm looking forward to it.
Great, thank you. Next I see Jen and Nick Vardy.
Hey, I don't think Nick will hop on camera, but he's here. Jen Vardy, I am a resident. We've been living in Prairie Creek for almost 6 years. And before that, we lived out in the rural in Anzac. To support participation, I'm fluent in Teams, so nothing particular for me. Topics that haven't been listed, nothing that comes to the front of my mind. But just really excited to participate. As Will knows and the community knows, we kind of feel like we're the forgotten subdivision sometimes. So it's wonderful to be able to come together and have our say. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jen and Nick. And actually, and to the kids as well. Thank you both for coming. Yeah, and you said a couple of key words here that I really like to hear. One is participate and also have your say. So we're happy to have everyone here tonight to participate and have their say. Next on my list, I see Junior Shiner.
Yeah, hi, I'm Junior. I lived in Prairie Creek since 2008. So I've been there a while, and so I'm interested to see what you guys are putting forward. I haven't had a chance to look online at it yet. So I'm out at work. I work at Curl, so I'm just joining you from camp right now. But I'm kind of hoping maybe there might be something for a dog park. I don't know, maybe an off-leash area of some sorts. But thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Junior. Thanks for joining in all the way from Curl. That's awesome. Okay, next I see Matthew and I believe Sherry. Forgive if I don't have the right pronunciation.
Sherry's correct. We've lived in Fort McMurray for 14 years and Prairie Creek for just over 4. We back onto Highway 69, so I'm interested in hearing about how the trail is going to affect the back part of my property.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Okay, that's all I see as far as participants at this time. So I think we can continue motoring forward there, John.
Great, thanks for the introductions, everybody. So the project itself was identified about 5 years ago when the municipality had, obviously it comes from requests from residents, from councillors, from a number of factions. Nonetheless, some exploration started about 5 years ago where some potential alignment options were put forward. So the ones that I'm going to show tonight are they've been in the works for a few years. So now we're at the point now we're moving toward public engagement to gauge public sentiment, more importantly, to ensure that we're putting trails in the correct places that really meet the needs of the community. There were improvements made to the landscaping along Highway 69, also known as the Airport Road or Prairie Creek Trail. Those trees were, and the berm was done about 5, 6 or so years ago. So we have some slightly established vegetation along that berm. There's really no existing trails. So we have some trail routes, some partially gravel trails going through some of the public utility lots. By the storm pond at the southwest corner of the site, there are some gravel trails there. But for the most part, as you see in this image here, they're unimproved access routes where people are walking. So again, the options we're going to look at were completed about 4 years ago, and now we're at the juncture where the municipality is committed to at least look at the detailed design components. Some of the project goals that we have, the first is about active transportation. So active transportation is about getting from place to place without motorized means. So walking, biking, cycling, becoming more active, being more engaged, and the socialization that comes with it as we use the public realm. So looking at providing some rec opportunities, of course, trails being one of the most prominent recreational activities that we see across Western Canada in communities like Fort McMurray. Secondly, we want to determine safe and feasible trail routes and having a continuous paved trail system. Nothing's more frustrating than a network of trails that come to an end and you have to stop and turn around. So we want to look at continuity in a way that we can create a system of trails so that you can do loops, you can do, you know, a small loop, a large loop. So those are important when it comes to trails planning. So this is not just about putting trails that come to a dead end. We want to think about that continuity. Safety is very important, and we're going to be talking about some potential road crossings where we want to mitigate for that. We obviously want to reduce the amount of surface area or the times that a pedestrian might be crossing a road. So that's part of promoting safety. Things like lighting is another consideration. We also have to obtain some necessary approvals and agreements. So we're going to be looking at some trail options that don't have the trail on municipal land, where we are potentially within the highway road right away, where we have to work with Alberta Transportation on the south, east, and the west side, where we're actually on provincial land and we have to get regulatory approvals from the province. So it's not all municipal land, and it's not just a simple flip of the switch for us to put the trail where we want. And then from the final goal is to actually create the detailed drawings for future implementation. And the point is we're going to be creating the detailed design, some cost estimates, putting that forward to administration. Administration and council would then consider for construction. So it's not within the current 2023 capital budget because the design isn't done yet, but it would be considered for that or future subsequent years. So I just want to take a pause here and allow people to, if they can, if you know how to use the raise hand function. If you don't, find an opportunity to start speaking and blurt in. But we're looking to determine what your values are. You can pick your top three, or maybe what's your most important value. But as it relates to developing trails within Prairie Creek community, what are your top values? So it might be, as we build it, let's do it, but let's really make sure we preserve existing vegetation. We don't want to affect those trees. Those mature trees are something that we cherish. It could be making sure that it's a continuous loop so that it's not just a dead end. And maybe that is the most important consideration that we have. Better connectivity, so getting from my place to my friend's place who lives across the community, or it might be to the bus stop. Best value for tax dollars. So I'm going to show you some alignments that are achievable, but they're going to be much more expensive than alternate alignments. Lastly, a trail that supports multiple users. Just to be very clear here, the municipality does have a very regimented standard for multi-use trails. So the intention is, if a trail is going to be built, it will be a 3-meter wide paved trail with benches at regular intervals along the trail. So this is going to be a paved trail, not a gravel trail. It's not going to be an ATV or off-highway vehicle use compatible trail. This is for pedestrians, for cyclists, for walkers, for those using passive means, and that's already been established. So and then you might have other values that are similar to this. So maybe with a show of hands, you can watch out for anybody that has any comments to this.
Yeah, I see a comment from Jen and Nick here, and she says, or they say, speaking of provincial federal land ownership, do we know if this land has traditional meaning to any of the Indigenous communities, i.e. McDonald Island, Moncton Flats, for example? I also see a hand in the air.
Yeah, and thanks for that. I'll address that comment first. And that's a very good point, and we really appreciate the thoughtfulness of the question. Yes, there is actually some land here that we've discovered as we started the project where there are Indigenous interests, and that required us to alter the course of some of the options. And this is at the very southwest corner of the development where there are some potential Indigenous interests. They haven't been established yet. So we're staying clear and away from those, and I will point that out when we go through the mapping.
And Jen, I did see a hand up there. Did you also want to chime in, or was that just your question there in the chat room?
Sure, I can chime in when we speak about activities. Yeah, some of the top three would be having the loop around the community. It would be nice to have a continuation, especially having younger kids who were learning about pathways and kind of finding their ways home, having that safe area that if they could find the path, they know that they'll be able to get to one location instead of having dead ends, especially being close to a highway. That's really important. Best value for tax dollars. We obviously want this to get approved by council and fiscally it will be more likely to happen if the budget makes sense. And preservation of existing vegetation. The less damage that we have to do to the land, the better. We have a lot of beautiful area in Prairie Creek. And I think that there's a way to enhance the beauty of the community without minimizing or getting rid of the current vegetation.
Thanks, Jen. I appreciate that. I don't see any other hands or comments at this time, but we're certainly open to more if anyone else would like to jump in. And I see Janine's hand is up.
I'm kind of on the same page with Jen. Definitely preservation of existing vegetation, because especially from our wildfire, we had a lot taken away from us, especially in like kind of off to the east of me, on Mustang, and then also as well as behind like with the horse stables and stuff. So I'd hate to see for anything else to go away. And then a continuous loop, absolutely. I think that's a great idea instead of having dead ends. And then, of course, best value for tax dollars. And maybe a fourth one, too, to support multiple users, walking, biking, kids scootering, anything, really, just to kind of have that so we're not singling out and we're including everybody.
Great. Thank you, Janine. Anyone else? Okay,
All
I
right,
don't
thanks,
see
everybody.
any. Yeah,
We will
go
move
ahead, Jen.
on.
Sorry.
All right, thanks, Will. So with the study process, here's 7 different steps that we've gone through. The first thing was assessing the existing conditions for the trail. So I'm going to show you some photographs and give you my views and my observations of some of the potential trail alignments, some of the challenges, the pros and cons of these alignments. And, you know, I'm going to welcome some comments from you as well, because you are residents and you know this far better than people who have been there only 5 and 6 times. We've also had discussions with internal municipal staff with some, and we're then going to be doing this initial stakeholder and public workshop. We are going to be reaching out to other specific groups such as the horse or the saddle club, because they have very specific needs if we are going to be encountering their land. The online public engagement tool, as Will mentioned, is live. The Participate with Buffalo site right now does host a survey, has project information. Certainly this video is going to be posted. And most exciting is going to be the What We Heard report. What we've heard through this engagement, through the subsequent one, through some of our conversations, that really tells you why are we making the decisions we are. So this is going to be, you know, really based on engagement, not just from the community, but also from administration to ensure the values are instilled, where the proper standards are being used, and most importantly, that we're doing this in such a way that becomes approvable and we get council support at the end. We're then going to be finalizing the proposed alignment, and this is going to happen in early into the new year, in January, early February, and then we're going to start the detailed design once we have gone through that engagement process and we've rationalized that decision. We are going to do a follow-up workshop similar to this. We'll sign up through RSVP and through other means for people to engage and see, participate with Buffalo, to look at the draft design. The What We Heard report is going to be an all-encompassing report that talks about what we heard from beginning to the end of the process. And then the last thing is the finalization of detailed drawings, specifications, and putting together a tender package. So this is a shovel-ready project. So the moment council says, yes, we believe in this, we fund this, that there is no delay, that it can be built. So some of the site constraints that we've observed, obviously what you see back here is not a one-off. Yes, I was here after we had a rain event 2 days prior. You can see some of the gray skies. It probably was wanting to rain that day. Nonetheless, by nature of the vegetation that we see here, those are water-loving plants. We have, you know, cattail is the most prominent, I think, publicly known emergent vegetation. But seeing cattails and cattail heads here tells us it's often or almost always very wet in the spring, summer, and fall conditions. So we do have very poor drainage, not just in this area, but also in the back of lots. So some of you that, and this is on the very south side, saddle clubs to my left, and residents are to my right of Prairie Creek. Some of you may experience waterlogged or even pooling in the back of your yards. So many of these backyards don't drain very well. We talked about provincially owned lands. There are some alignments that we're looking at on the west, the south, and the east side that are Crown owned. So we would have to get a license of occupation to do that. which is not insurmountable, and the province has already agreed to allow us to do that should we choose those alignments. Along the north, we have 2 options that I'm going to show you where the segment might sacrifice trees recently planted. So if on top of that berm, we do lose all of those trees that were planted 6 and 7 years ago, we do have alternate places to put it, but then we have more challenging conditions, and I'll describe those further on. And again, to the earlier point with Indigenous land interests, there is a portion of the land, as I mentioned, in the southwest corner that does have interests, and we are respecting that to the utmost here, and we're avoiding that area altogether. So going through the back a lot, and I'm along the south side, and a lot of you may recognize this, or could be the person that actually laid this 2x6 on the ground. So this was a makeshift little bridge to keep people a bit higher and drier out of the muddy conditions. Nonetheless, we do have some challenging conditions just by nature of the grading and water that really has nowhere to go. Another example of that further down the trail, I showed this picture earlier. Nonetheless, you have ponding water, which not only has standing water, which makes it challenging for passage, but this is also, fantastic for mosquito breeding. And that's one thing I believe people are quite annoyed with, is any standing water that they have near a backyard that could breed mosquitoes. So this was kind of an ideal place for that. I'm now on the west side of the development. So this will be Rodeo Drive, standing at the southwest corner, looking northward toward the highway to Airport Road, or Prairie Creek Drive or Road. The conditions here, we have a very small shoulder, so the idea would be to put the trail where you see all of the very high, in this case it looks like a lot of thistle in there. The trail would be built onto the road. So if we were to build this, we would have to extend the road and do a substantial amount of grading. So as a site constraint, there's the grades, which would require a lot more fill material than if we put the trail elsewhere. I'm now on the opposite side of the road, and you'll notice that in many areas of Prairie Creek, we don't have sidewalks. And there's a fantastic opportunity to, rather than put in a 3-meter wide paved trail on the west side or on the left side of the road as you see it, putting in a separate sidewalk in here. So some of the alternatives that we have is a sidewalk that we can put in this location, which is street side, which has less road crossings. So actually you avoid crossing Rodeo Drive. But then further down, if you look further down, or if you know the site, you run into a bus stop, which is a bit of an impediment. You'd have to walk around it. So for cyclists, and then you have people sitting and standing at the bus stop, you may have cyclists or strollers or walkers going by that might be interrupted by people at the bus stop. I mentioned there are a few very informal gravel trails within the neighborhood. So you do see this in a couple of locations where there is some gravel paths. The idea, again, as I mentioned, if we are going to be putting in trails, these will be paved hard surface trails that could be cleared of snow in the wintertime. So not seasonal trails. Somebody spoke about off-leash, and unfortunately the scope of this project is not designating off-leash areas, but we do recognize that a lot of people do use the trail systems for walking their pets, whether on or off-leash. So again, there's not an off-leash dog park as part of the scope to scrutinize the site. However, at this point, we're looking at a trail system that would provide access to different areas, such as the storm pond, which could, in the future, if the municipality went that direction, entertain other options, and potentially off-leash being one of them, but that's not in the cards at this point. Nonetheless, we do in this case have some more firm ground, and you can see by nature of the ground that there's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of people back here using these trails. There is some signage preventing vehicles, and certainly from what we've seen of some of the fences, people have been using this trail, or this, call it makeshift trail areas, access to their backyard when they're maybe moving in new landscape material, when they're building a deck. You can tell with the way people have taken some of their fence segments down temporarily, put them back up again. So we're trying to discourage vehicle use. And again, as mentioned earlier, this would not be authorized for off-highway vehicles. So this is not a means for people to open up their back gate, get onto the trail with their side-by-side or their quad. Here's a gravel trail. This is a very well-maintained, well-established 2.5 meter wide gravel trail passing through the stormwater management facility at the southwest corner. So it gives you a sense of some of the constraints we have. And again, some of the constraints are on the land itself. Some of them are presented by poor drainage and back of lot. We have constraints as well. One I didn't mention was the width of some of those trails. If I was to go back to this photo here, if I was to put a 3-meter trail in, we would be removing some trees here to get that proper width at the asphalt trail plus the shoulders. So you would have a negligible amount of plant material of trees and shrubs being taken out on one side or the other of this alignment. So forcing a trail in this location, and we're going to look at some options shortly, but you'll in those options, I'll speak about the removal of existing vegetation. So all the site constraints I spoke of, we talked about the need to, or the desire to reduce the number of times we cross major roads. We spoke about the need for extra grading, certainly the poor drainage that we would have to alleviate through bringing in a lot of fill material and dealing with water. We also spoke about the potential removal of vegetation. Are there other site constraints that we should be aware of? So think about things like the trail location. We have here views, sounds, smells, any other site conditions that might complicate the planning. So by show of hands, we'll let us know if we have any takers, but does anybody have any other comments on constraints?
Yeah, I see Jen and Nick have their hand up.
Hello again. So you had a comment about ideally the trails will not be used for off-highway vehicles. Definitely respect the bylaw says that, but just when you come, so when you're at the lights going on Sapre Creek Trail by the Keanu building in Gregoire, there is an unofficial off-highway, and I know a lot of our neighbors will just cut through that, and then we'll just go straightly there. So just if we're being realistic in what people do in the community and planning for what the realistic use is, I know that people will go on their off-highway vehicles and use that trail just to go right across. So just once again, just planning for what we realistically use it for. Fingers crossed bylaws not online. And I also do like the comments about not crossing the streets when we don't need to. And I also like having the sidewalk when you're coming off Rodeo Drive, not having it across the highway, having it closer to the road. I like that. However, I'm not on that road. I know Janine is, so it would be additional shoveling and whatnot. So I'd love to hear from people who are actually on that road if that's what they want.
Thanks, Jen. Next, I see Matthew and Sherry have their hand up.
You mentioned the berm along Highway 69 there a couple of times, but can you speak more about that? Because I know from speaking with our neighbors who have been here a lot longer than us, who couldn't be online with us tonight, since that berm has been put in, there's been more and more trouble with our fences backing along Highway 69 and the, so I'm wondering how that's going to further affect it from the trail.
Yeah, great. And if you don't mind, I'll defer this to a few slides from now where we actually have an image of that, and we'll actually show the berm so everybody knows what we're talking about, and I'll definitely address that. So the first thing I'll address is what I'm talking about with where the trail alignments are, whether it's in the ditch or on top of berm, and then some of the challenges that you're encountering. And maybe at that point when the photo comes on, I could try to address what I might think is causing your fence problems, and then you could jump in and help out.
Okay, thank you. Next, I see Junior has his hand up.
Yeah, I see you guys are looking at this very south side, and I gotta say, like what the other lady said there about people who use their backyards to access the trail system that's there now, like currently. I don't back on that, but I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of problems with people who are going to want to continue to drive their ATV on there, which I'm all for, really, to be honest. And I don't even live back there, but just because it's been so long that people have used it. So I think we're going to have it on our hands for people who aren't going to be too happy about that. Also, if you're disturbing the land back there, it just makes me wonder people's fences in their back property. What'll happen there? Will they be torn down, and will the city be paying to replace them, or will that be an individual thing to do?
Yeah, and as Will had mentioned, our firm and we've been working in the municipality for a number of years. And one of the recent projects in Punkage, who's with us today, he was also the project manager for that. And that was the off-highway vehicle master plan update. So we know off-highway vehicles very well, quad skidoo side-by-sides, where the desire lines, where the focal areas are. And Junior, you mentioned it was mentioned earlier as well that there is a prominence of people who use off-highway vehicles that access from their back of lot, go by Keanu. That's kind of a, an informal area. We heard a lot about grandfathering, or we were allowed to go from the direct route from our place to the nearest staging area. That's not the case. That's simply not the bylaw. So the intention is for us not to use this project as a first of the examples where we're going to start to allow that. Some of these trail alignments are going to be very narrow, and putting an off-highway vehicle on a 3-meter paved trail with pedestrians, cyclists, walkers, bikers, other users is going to come with challenges. So this would be a bad example of an area where there is the room to do that. Nonetheless, it is a reality, and we know that. When we did the off-highway vehicle master plan, we had over 80% of survey respondents clearly say they want more access. They want more off-highway vehicle use. They want to regulate it and allow it within the urban service area. So we know there's the demand. Not to say it's entirely off the cards, but that's a separate initiative that council had weighed in on earlier this year, and we know it's going to come back. Any other comments?
Yeah, we do have a comment here in the chat, and Jen and Nick, well, Nick says he wants wayfinding signs in English, Cree, and Dene, and I can actually speak to that a little bit. The municipality is just wrapping up a wayfinding strategy for the entire region, actually, and there is an Indigenous language component to that, where we want to see Indigenous languages used on wayfinding signage across the region, so not just for this particular project. So, but noting that this is something that Nick is interested in seeing for this particular project, raising that for your attention as well there, John and Punkage. Thank you. And I don't see any other hands at this time, but if anyone else would like to add to this, or we can continue moving forward. And seeing no further hands, John, you can proceed.
Thanks, Will. So this is an image that shows the Prairie Creek community. We have Prairie Creek Trail, also known as Highway 69, locally known as Airport Road to the north. That is the north barrier. We have Rodeo Drive on the west side, which is our other kind of barrier. We've got a stormwater management facility in the bottom left corner that I spoke about. And then along the south side, you can see where some trails fall exactly along the back of lot, or there's a bit of a setback with the blue and the green lines, and hard to read here, but we are going to look at some other blow-ups of these as well. And then on the east side, you can see where the trails are either going right along the fence line versus going on the within provincial lands. So where you see the dotted lines to the south and the east, where the trail in the orange and the green veers off, that's provincial land, and that's where we would have to get some provincial consent through permitting. Along the Prairie Creek Trail, you can see there are some fence alignments that cut right through the center of what you see as a bunch of trees, which is going to cause certainly a lot of disruption to that berm. Alternatively, having the trail going in the bottom of the ditch. So all of these options are within the survey that you'll find on Participate, where you're allowed to, or we're hoping people would comment on their preferred alignment. So option number 1, shown in pink here, this shows a trail alignment on the west side that follows along, would be basically a separate sidewalk, wouldn't cross Rodeo Drive at all. The only challenge we have is at the very north end, you can see where there's a pink star. And can you see my cursor moving?
No.
No, we don't see the cursor.
I'll see if I'll try a different tool here.
I can see the star though.
Okay, so can you see my pointer?
See the cursor.
Yep.
Now we
can
can
see your pointer.
Perfect. So you'll see a pink star here. One of the challenges we have with keeping the trail here is there's a right turn lane on Rodeo Drive. And as we understand it from the engineering department, that can't go away easily. that's going to require a traffic impact assessment. So before we endorse this as an alignment, we have to ensure that we can close that road, that one turn bay. Reason being, back of lot is less than a meter away from the curb. So if we were to put a trail in there, we're putting people onto the road. So additional work would have to be done to prove that out. So for those of you that say this is the logical alignment, if we come back in 2 months from now and say, sorry, we couldn't do it, then it's because of the traffic impact assessment that was done here. This option shows the trail going on the north side, right along the top of the berm, where the trail would be high and dry. Every time it rains or snows, the trail is outside of that gathering area. Nonetheless, it would affect all of those trees that are planted along there. On the east side, it follows the back of lot, so it'd be tight against the back of lot as well as on the south. However, that would put the trail in those low spots. To build this trail, we would have to raise those low spots. But what that's going to do is compound water. So as somebody had mentioned, they had you put the berm and it caused problems on their lots. It's likely because water that was supposed to go into the ditch now got stuck against the base of that berm. And now the ground becomes more saturated. It prematurely rots some of the fences. And that's just the potential condition that we foresee if we were to do that on the east and the south side. So it definitely comes with some caution. And certainly the scope of this, we don't want to be causing any accelerated damage to anybody's personal property.
So I'm just going to jump in here real quick. I see that Jen and Nick have their hand up.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you kind of answered my question. When I was envisioning the trail, I was definitely envisioning us paving inside of the current ditch that we have and doing something to mitigate the flooding and the water situation, and not having it on the top of the busy highway, but more in the ditch where people are currently walking right now. So in your professional opinion, that's not an option because of the extensive flooding?
Not necessarily. In my opinion, it's doable, but what it does is it really degrades the longevity of your asphalt. Rather than the pavement and the structure being in a drier condition, you're putting it in the bottom of a ditch where it's going to be saturated more often. So rather than a trail lasting, let's just say 15 years without any work, it might last 7 or 8. So it starts to work against our values of being financially responsible. However, it does alleviate, we don't have to eliminate all those trees that are planted. Secondly, there are some people that may say, and rightfully will say, you're putting a berm or a trail on top of a berm, and people are now looking over my fence into my backyard. Whereas if it's in the bottom of the ditch, they can't really see as much in my backyard. So that's really, so in our opinion, we're showing the two options, but they are both feasible. Just one is more, I would say, fiscally responsible, which is what you're seeing here on the berm. From an environmental side and from a tree preservation side, this is counter to that. So the other option would be better. So it's an either or here.
Thanks, John. I see also a guest has their hand up.
Hi. So my house actually backs on to Airport Road. So I've lived here for 15 years, and I agree with what they said about when the berm was built. My backyard has water pooled in it all summer long. It, I think, has dried up maybe once or twice since that berm has gone there. And my concern would be if the trail is between the berm and my fence, that, the water issue is just going to be worse again. I mean, right now, backing onto Airport Road, that's people walk behind my house on the berm. Nobody walks along the fence because they can't. It's a swamp. So everybody who walks along Airport Road behind my house, at least, are on top of that berm. And I don't know, that's what I thought it would look like going forward, right, if it was to be built.
Yeah, and thank you for the comment. And if you're to look at the pink alignment right now, so this is generally the top of berm where it does affect those trees. It's looking at a second option. So this is probably a better photograph. This is you're probably one of these homes that back onto Airport Road. This is showing the alignment of the trail on top of the berm. The other option is on this side of the berm. So not on the fence side, it would be on the road side of the berm. So it wouldn't be up against your fence Nonetheless, even if it was there, it wouldn't necessarily change the drainage. The drainage is the drainage. That's already a problem, and this wouldn't accelerate it, nor would it alleviate it if we were to put the trail by the fences. So in either option here, the grades do not change. We don't change the drainage regime or the way in which water moves from back of lot outside to the ditch.
And I see Jen and Nick have their hand up once more.
Yeah, just for clarity. So if you had it on, sorry, give me one sec. Sorry, my son turned on his iPad and it blasted through the house. So if you put it on, not on top of the brim, but just how you were showing, kind of in the ditch before the highway, what is the distance between, just the second picture that you had up, the difference between when the highway starts? Yes, and then this teal line. What is the distance here we're looking at?
I don't have a precise distance, but I would estimate that's around 8 meters. So 25, 26 feet would be to the center of the trail line. From a safety perspective, you know, of vehicles that veer off, it's a challenge. The other challenge we would have is as they clear the snow off of the highway and you have large vehicles that toss snow a long way, it might go onto the trail. So it makes it extra work for the municipality to stay off of clearing the snow off of here. So I'm you got a bit of a leading question there because I know it's going toward this, you know, traffic safety and, you know, you're getting close to the road with this trail.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. It seems a little bit close.
Okay, other questions? All right, so to move on, we spoke of the trail alignment along back of lot. So to alleviate this or to not deal with the wet conditions, we would raise this. This would be an elevated piece of ground that the trail would go over top. What you would create though is a spot along the back of lot, exactly what we're hearing about along Airport Road, where we have water built up. Maybe culverts at certain intervals to let water go from one side to the other. But we believe it's going to cause some concerns with those people that have low backyards, because not all backyards appear to be graded properly. We spoke of this alignment. This seems to be the favorite alignment following this side. I'm on the far west side of the development along Rodeo Drive, you know, creating a sidewalk here. I preferred over going on the opposite side and having to cross the road. In this option, we were also, the next option, talking about going in the bottom of the ditch versus the top of the ditch. So in this case, we would go on the, and here I'm facing to the east toward the airport. And you can see here how we're putting the trail at the bottom of that ditch. So as mentioned earlier, it is from a tree protection perspective, much better. From a usability perspective, it's more challenging because it may be wet more often. But you also don't have people standing on the top of berm looking directly into the back of some, you know, of people's backyards. That there's some differences there. And please, if anybody is thinking I'm leaning toward one or the other, we're not. And honestly, in most of these cases, we don't have an answer, and that's why we're seeking public input. So we've looked at this image already. That shows the berm that would be on the top, or the trail would be on top of the berm, nonetheless affecting pretty much all of the trees that have been planted here. And a lot of these are such a size, particularly the poplars, that are too large for us to transplant. Maybe some of the spruce, but it comes with some challenge if the trees are on a bit of a slope. Option number 2 is, and again, another perimeter trail that goes around the entire development. In this case, we are going in the bottom of the ditch. You can see here how we've crossed the road at Rodeo Drive. So we do have one intersection. We've got a trail going along the west side of the road where we would have to elevate that near the ditch. You can see we have another crossing here, and the reason why it is here, this is that area of land that I spoke of earlier, where we do have some Indigenous land interests on these parcels of land, which is currently federally owned. So that being said, we've avoided that altogether. So if we do put a trail on the west side of Rodeo Drive, it would require a crosswalk at this location. Along the south side, we are, rather than going in back of lot and against the fences, we are shifting to the south, going within provincial land. We're trying to go just on the south side of those trees, so we're not actually affecting any existing trees. As Punkage mentioned earlier, he's been working with the Saddle Club for quite some time on fencing options. And this is where you would see a separation fence between Saddle Club property and this trail, just to ensure that you don't have trail users. And it's not about trespass, this is about public safety and ensuring that we have the right kind of fence that's compatible with horses, that has breakaway bars and the, components to it that are safe for horses, safe for people, but also keep things like pets out so you don't have any conflicts. On the east side, you can see we're going on the back side of these trees. So again, on provincial land, not along back of lot. So this is the second option, which is more, it's still a perimeter trail. I'm on the southwest corner where I said we had some Indigenous land interest behind me. This is where we would require a crosswalk, the trail to come into the ditch, and then to build this area up so that we can elevate that so the trail is at nearly the grade of the road. Option number 3 is more about internal trails. So we'd still have the trail network to the south. Really what we're doing is we're avoiding this conversation altogether, avoiding putting it in the bottom of the ditch or losing all of those trees, trying to create the ability for trails that come through a public utility lot. Yes, you have to follow the road to get to the next trail, then you get on, and it is more discontinuous. So you don't have logical loops or perfect loops where you can just stay on trails. There's a number of road crossings required in this option. I showed both of those pictures. This is an example of one of the PULs, or the public utility lots, that there are. So you can see in this case, we've got a shelter here and a waste receptacle. We would put the trail along some of these areas that are being actively used as walkways right now for a lot of people. Option number 4 is kind of a hybrid of both. It has a perimeter trail that goes around. It also has all the interior trails. So again, if money wasn't a concern and we want to build everything, this is your option that has both the perimeter trail. Whether this in the north goes along the trees or goes in the berm, whether this one goes back of lot or here, nonetheless, it's demonstrating that we're doing even more, not just a perimeter trail, but if I lived, let's say, on Shetland and I wanted to have close access, there would be a trail right by my home. I go here and down, and here I'm on the perimeter trail system. So this is just, again, providing more options on the interior. So we've looked at some of these options already, so that's why I'm skipping through them quickly. So next conversation we have here is what do we like about each of the alignment options? And so we talked about top or bottom of berm on the north side, right along back of lot versus on provincial land on the south and the east. On the west side, whether along Rodeo Drive, either it's where a sidewalk would be versus on the opposite side of the road, but having road crossings, and then all the interior trails. Anybody have any comments on these alignments specifically? And if needed, I can jump back to another map.
I see Junior has his hand up.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, on the very far west side, is there any chance in putting the trail out through the fire burnt woods instead of along the road? Like, is that possibly an option that we could use?
So what you're suggesting is maybe through here.
Yeah, through there. Yeah, so it's more like out of the way, kind of you're in the forest. It's kind of nicer sort of deal.
The answer is yes. It would, again, require provincial approvals because this is provincial land. The challenge would be, and if I was a provincial regulator, this I don't mind, because what it does is it still allows for development to happen here, whatever is going to be proposed down the road. If you were to put a trail through here, it may not last the test of time. They may not give you a long-term license of occupation because they may say, look, this might be developed someday. And what you're doing is you're sterilizing or taking away quite a bit of land that's going to be segregated now by the trail. So is it doable? Absolutely. And I love your thinking because it provides for a nice, more natural based, a nice quaint trail that's away from the road, potentially on higher ground, but the approvability might be a concern. But we're not there yet. I don't have an answer if that's the case, but we will explore that to make sure that if we are disregarding, it's for good reason.
Thank you.
Does anyone else want to add a comment? I see Jen, go ahead.
Yeah, I also like Junior's idea, having it go through in the bush over there. Jack, no more, please. Love you too, buddy. I said fiscal responsibility, and then I like number 4 the best. So, you know, sorry about that. My only concern is once again just on the highway road, trying to keep the trees and then also not making everyone walk in slush. So I don't have any direction. There would be no way to keep the current and maybe even 80% of the current trees that we have and having pathway that go through them. So building around the current trees. I don't know if that's possible. I don't have an environment background, or is that something that's been done?
Yeah, and what we have done in some contexts is a hybrid of both. So potentially you have the trail that follows the top of berm, then it veers down in the bottom of a ditch, and you save some trees. You go up top again, you lose the trees, then you take out the trees. And let's keep in mind these trees can be replaced. If they are taken down, we certainly have the ability, or the sky's the limit when it comes to. It just depends on what financial resources we have. Trees could be put back. So we could maybe have half the trail up top, half on the bottom, and undulate it. For example, if I was to keep the key trees might be based on viewshed. Maybe it's based on what residents really have the need to have the protection. The challenge is how to be fair to everybody. And you don't want to treat this as, well, these people got the opportunity to keep the mature trees. These people are now stuck with brand new ones that are newly planted. So it becomes a bit of a challenge for the municipality to navigate through that. So, but I do like your thinking about how do we do both, and we can do both, but it comes with some challenges.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Okay. Well, thanks everybody. So again, Participate is a fantastic location for this. That's where we're going to collect a lot of good information, and Will can speak to some of the amount of traffic that we're starting to see through there, through Facebook, and through other comments we're getting. If there's anything that I didn't address that people would like me to respond to, now's the time. If there are any other comments or questions, I'd be happy to take those now.
I don't. Oh, here we go. I see Junior has his hand up.
I hate to beat a dead horse here, but yeah, like I was saying, on the far west side, if I mean, I don't know what it would take to talk to the provincial government or whatever about that piece of land, but I mean, so long as I've been here, nothing's ever been done with it, and it would kind of make a good excuse, I guess you could say, to if we put the trail through there to make it kind of an off-leash dog area as well. It's kind of out of the way across the highway from everyone else, and it would make it so that you're now entering an off-leash area sort of deal. And yeah, it just gives an idea, because I mean, I take my dogs down to the dog parks 3 times a day. So it would be nice to have a good spot somewhere around to have them near my neighborhood, right?
Absolutely, and thanks for that comment. Punkage will take that comment to his camp and have that discussion as a potential option, because the municipality is always looking for future projects, or when they're considering the need for things like more staging areas or more off leash areas. This would be, I agree, this is a great candidate site, having something on the south end of the urban service area. So, and then again, to reiterate, we will actually make the calls, talk to the province, and see what is doable, because I do like your line of thinking. The cost of it, we'd add a few extra meters to get that much further, but not a ton more. And I'm a huge fan of nature-based recreation, of connecting people to the natural environment, and that would be a much preferred alignment to be walking through a natural area versus alongside the road. Great. Any other comments?
Yeah, I see Jen has her hand up.
Yeah, no, again, I second the comment that Junior made, and thinking about, financial savings, if down the road we then have to sell it back to the province, I mean, the land's already prepped. It's already cleared. So there you go. 2 birds. My question specifically isn't about Prairie Creek, but like I had said, lateral to us, we have the unofficial off highway area in Gregoire. Has there been any conversation about adding trails in the back of the industrial area? I don't know if it's appropriate to ask, because that's where I utilize the trails. I walk there and then do the 10K loop back to Prairie Creek.
Yeah, and I'll let Pankaj speak to this one after I elaborate, but certainly we've been involved in other projects. One of them was the Park Recreation Master Plan, where we looked at, where not necessarily where certain trail alignments should go, but the need to connect not just residential areas, but also to look at industrial, commercial, light industrial, to ensure we do have access to some of those areas as well. So this sounds like a good candidate site. Pankaj, maybe you can speak more whether that's been specifically identified or if that's something that might be on the horizon.
We haven't identified anything yet in terms of the development for additional OHV stuff, trails, but I do think that idea that you have is a very good candidate. If you want to reach out to us in regards to that, please do so. The best way to do so is again through Pulse. You can contact Will and he can get that message to me and I will address it.
Great, thanks, Pankaj.
Fantastic, thank you.
I do believe Ella has her hand up, please.
Hi there. I'd like to go back to the picture of the diagram in yellow where the pond is that backs onto the horse club. Yes. Okay. So if you look at that one, and I can see the dotted lines, yep, down here, I would assume that's the 2 rows of fences right there. The
That's
no
correct.
climb fence and the horse club fence itself. So when we, Pankaj, you might remember this, one of the things that the club was very adamant about was that this fence would extend down to Rodeo Drive behind right now where our manure pile is. Now, it doesn't look like on this map that it's there, because that was one of our considerations in giving up this part of the land over here for the trail, is that fence would extend down to our main gate, and that would keep our club, like dogs couldn't come in, people can't access through there, horses can't get out there. So I'm just wondering, is that something, the fence is just not, is not in the plan anymore, or somebody forgot about it?
Sorry, it's my error. I should have instructed John Butchko and his team that it should have gone all the way to Rodeo Drive.
Thank you.
That's my omission.
To be clear, that would be here.
Yes.
Perfect. So noted, and again, these are showing trail alignments. The actual fence alignment, once we do decide on whether the trail is here or here, the actual placement of the fence, we would definitely be, we do intend on having further conversations with the club to confirm that, to ensure that you're satisfied with that and that it meets the spirit of any agreements you've made in the past. So thanks, Pankaj, for stepping up to oversee that, and then we'll ensure that we meet the spirit of that negotiation you had in the past of putting some fencing here.
Sure.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
I don't see any other hands up, but if anyone else would like to ask a question or share some information, feel free. So I see Jason has.
Oh, go ahead, Jason.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, so with the expansion to the west, if you were to go over to the west side of Rodeo, would you foresee in the future going all the way some kind of a trail to Quarry Ridge?
Yeah, and that's a good point, that how this connects to other developments, that's beyond the scope of this. We are right now looking at the kind of the four corners of Prairie Creek. And again, Punkage, you can take that to your team and look at that to see if there is a kind of a more regional connection that's going to be considered of how this might link up to other communities.
It would be nice if we could connect to the other communities. I think that would be an overall, we do have parks, there's a plan that's looking at active transportation that involves cycling, pedestrians, the people that are moving on foot or on cycles to go across the whole community. That sort of master plan is being worked on presently. Again, that's not, I'm not handling that, but there are people within my group that are looking at that presently. I would strongly suggest that you put that forward, that question forward, and it should be addressed.
Thanks, Punkage.
Thanks, Pankaj. I know that as part of this public engagement in general, we are recording comments and questions that we're hearing tonight. And this, of course, this question here would also be incorporated as part of that record. And we could be sharing that with the rest of the Parks team. And I believe, Pankaj, you were referring to the Parks Master Plan.
Yeah.
And yeah, and
there's also
connectivity.
Yep. Sorry, there's also an active transportation master plan that's being worked on.
Okay, there you go. So I think the goal really is to see connectivity as much as possible. And you might notice throughout the other parts of the region, the trails tend to evolve, and it seems like they keep growing every summer, and I keep finding new places. But thank you for this feedback, and we'll definitely be sharing this with our team.
Okay,
and
thanks, everybody.
I see in the chat, Jen has mentioned, yes, if I could safely walk to Tim's, that would be amazing and very Canadian. Yes, I agree with that. And now that there's a Tim's much closer by, that would definitely be within a walking distance. And also Junior says, yeah, to be able to connect with the rest of the city via walking and biking would be an amazing addition. Yes, I 100% agree with that comment. Any other comments or questions?
Great, thanks, everybody.
Oh, I see. Oh, Junior has his hand up again. Go ahead, Junior.
Yeah, like Janet said, if we could, I feel Prairie Creek for a long time has been the forgotten stepchild of Fort McMurray. So if we could get these trail systems into play that connects it to the rest of town, it'd be amazing. I think it's definitely something to look forward to. Thanks.
Thanks, Junior. Appreciate that feedback. Okay, and I don't see any other hands up at this time. However, if you do think of a question or a comment that you want to share with us after the fact, you're welcome to email me. I've put my email in the chat there. We also have a few tools on the Participate project page where you can share your ideas, or you can actually point out hotspots or opportunities on a map. And you can tell us a little bit more about your preferred trail alignment and maybe why. So those are some tools that you can continue sharing your information or your feedback with us up until about January 9th rather. And we'd love to hear everything and any ideas you have. Thank you.
Thanks, Will. As you mentioned, the Participate site, the survey itself is open till January 9th. Nonetheless, we will have another round of information collection when we do the second round of engagement. So the engagement doesn't quite stop, and it does go past January 9th. Next steps would be, of course, using the participate tool. We're going to then finalize that proposed alignment, start the detailed design. That's going to look at the specific conditions that we need to address. May it be grading, tree removal, tree replacement, things like that, where we deviate the trail in certain places. We're going to have a follow-up session like this with residents and stakeholders toward the end of January or early February. That'll be very similar to this, to talk about the decisions made and why. And that'll be justified by, as you see in the fourth bullet, the What We Heard report, to really show and share the information that we have received. Not to say that council is going to support this is not a a weighing of the option, the favorite option that by poll wins. We still have to justify it through ensuring that it's the most responsible decision made, but also meets the needs and the desires of residents, and balancing all those values. Last thing is putting the detailed drawings, as I mentioned earlier, having that so that this is a shovel-ready project that's ready to go as soon as council supports it. So I just want to thank everybody for their time. An investment of an hour and a half in an evening is particularly in the holiday season, is much appreciated. The municipality does have a number of engagement sessions going on, and many of you, I'm sure, are actively involved in other projects. So we really appreciate your interest in this one. We are really depending on public knowledge to look at some of the hotspots, the areas of concerns. We're also interested in people's perspectives on what the values are, so we can make good decisions in this. So again, thank you for your participation. I'll pass it to Pankaj to say last few words before he passes it on to Will.
I would request that if any of you have any comments, opinions, or anything to add to this project, please contact Will Collins. It is important that we do the best job that we can, but we need the public's input, and we would really appreciate that.
Thanks, Pankaj. And yes, yeah, feel free to contact me. I've left my email in the chat there. I'm also the one who's monitoring the Participate project page there as well. So I am reading and seeing what you're leaving us as far as comments, questions, or survey responses. Thank you again for coming out tonight and taking time out of the holiday season to share your feedback. Trying to think if there's anything else that I've missed. I don't think so. You can actually, one little point here, you can actually subscribe to this project page as well. And that will actually send updates to you when we do make updates to this page. And I do anticipate that the video will be up in the coming days, hopefully before the weekend, ideally. And I encourage you to let your neighbors know that this asset exists and that they are welcome to access this and share their feedback. Everyone's feedback is going to be important, and we really do rely on sort of the neighborhood networking. And I know that your neighborhood really has a great network for sharing information and getting information out to people. So I do encourage you to share this with your neighbors, and we look forward to hearing from all of you. And again, I guess we'll just wrap things up now and let you go so you can enjoy this frosty evening. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, John. Thank you, Pankaj. Thank you for everyone who attended this evening. And we'll let you go. Enjoy your evening. So thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time. Chat soon.
Thanks.